As an educational historian, you have written that our present-day problems have roots in the past. What do you believe we, as educators, most need to understand and learn about our past?
Well, I have to think about what I've learned, and the main thing that I've learned as a historian is the value of having a free public education system, of how important that is in the context of a democratic society, and that competition doesn't make schools better. One of the things we can learn from looking at history is that every time we turn to business ideas and they invoke competition and things like paying teachers extra to work harder, we have tried that, as I frequently point out, since the 1920s. It's never worked. Mm-hmm. And we just keep, in effect, reinventing the wheel and trying again and again to say, if only we could offer a bonus. And then when it's tried, it fails. And then we said, well, we'll offer a different bonus. We'll offer a bigger bonus. We'll offer it school-wide. We'll offer it to individuals. And it's like, it almost becomes like a Dr. Seuss book. How do you want your green eggs and ham? So Vanderbilt University, the National Center on Performance Incentives, did the ultimate merit pay test, which they reported on in 2010.
Right.
And they said, well, we haven't had a big enough bonus, so let's make it $15,000. Made no difference. And then within a few days, the U.S. Department of Education announced they were releasing almost $500 million for merit pay. So, I mean, the thing that's so frustrating is even when we have evidence, no one's paying attention to it.
The pendulum swings.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I would want to point out as one of the lessons of history is the importance of two things. First of all, we need so much to improve the teaching profession. We need to build respect for the teaching profession. I think we need much higher standards for entry into the profession. I think it's appalling that policymakers now are absolutely obsessed with the idea that we can get rid of high-cost, expensive veteran teachers and replace them with young college graduates who have just a few weeks of training. That's not a profession. That's not building a profession. That's getting rid of the whole idea of professionalism. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that we should be able to learn, not only from the past, but from looking at what other countries are doing and what high-performing countries are doing. They are not going in that direction. And I think that history teaches us that when we talk about education, we have to look at different disciplines. We have to pay attention to knowledge. What have we learned? Right now, our entire national debate about education is driven by only one kind of knowledge, and that's what the economists say. Not all economists, just some economists. In fact, just a few economists who happen to be, in most cases, very conservative economists, some of whom I know and like, but I don't agree with. And the voice of the economist has today drowned out the voices of cognitive psychologists, sociologists, people who study how children learn, people who understand how children live, how families develop, how families help their children learn, how communities help or don't help their children, people who study poverty, people who look at all the different aspects that affect learning. And we don't even look at issues having to do with the philosophy of education, let alone the history of education. So we've got right now this incredibly narrow tunnel vision focused only on test scores. And the test scores are taken as genuine, real measures of learning. And yet they're so disappointing because even when the scores go up and up, the remediation rates are not going down. So we're preparing a generation of test takers who are not necessarily more knowledgeable or better even at the things that they've been tested on year after year. And all of the talk, at least at the rhetoric level, is that we need to have innovation, we need to have ingenuity. These are the things that will drive our economy in the future. And the one thing I would say with a certain amount of surety is that this focus on standardized testing will not produce innovation, ingenuity, creativity. The idea that year after year you can ask children to choose a bubble of 4 possibilities is almost a guarantee that you will punish those who think differently. The child who overthinks the question will very often not choose the right answer, because the obvious answer might seem too obvious. And so the child who thinks a second time, another few minutes, might say, wait a minute, the other answer seems better because, and he'll have a perfectly good explanation. So I would think if we wanted to incentivize creativity and originality and innovation, we would worry more about having kids think about the questions. Are these the right questions? Is this what we really studied? Why do we need to know this? Why is this important? Why does it matter? How could we ask the question differently so that it elicited a more interesting response?
Are the other options considered distractors for a reason? They're built in as distractors, and think critically about those tests. I agree with you 100%
right.
on that.
And then the other thing is that I've noticed with the distractors that of 3 distractors, 1 right answer, 3 distractors, 2 of them are ridiculous, and then it's the 3rd one you have to worry about. And I recently, on the NAEP history test, this is the one that bothered me. There's a question that said, who influenced Martin Luther King the most? And then there were 2 ridiculous answers. And then there was Gandhi, which was the obvious answer, because that's what the textbooks all say. And then there was Jane Addams. And I looked at that and I thought, wait a minute. He must have known Jane Addams. She won a Nobel Prize. She was a pacifist. Their lives must have intersected in some fashion. He certainly knew of her work. How can I be sure that he was more influenced by Gandhi than by Jane Addams? Because the textbook says Gandhi, it doesn't say Jane Addams. But how do I know? So maybe Gandhi was the right answer. I don't know, but that was the kind of question where I'd want a student to think about it, and then go and do some research and read some more about Jane Addams
And question reality. Sure.
And how do you know? I mean, that's what you really want kids to think about. But I think about this. The other thing I think is hugely important with creativity and originality is having a really, really wonderful arts program. And so many schools are losing their arts programs. They're being sacrificed to the goals of testing and test preparation. And this is one of the worst fallouts of No Child Left Behind, is the narrowing of the curriculum, the loss of the arts, reduction of time for almost everything that's not tested, even including physical education.
Physical education and recess.
Yeah.
What do you predict for our future?
Well, I guess there's 2 different scenarios. Maybe there are 12 different scenarios, but one of them is things will go along as they are, and people, every time another set of test scores come out, people will say, see, the schools are worse, and we have to keep privatizing, and we have to keep cutting the budget, and you can't give the schools more because look how badly they're doing, and I'm not going to give them anything more until they improve, so let's cut their budget again. So I see this would be like the worst scenario. Would be more vouchers, more cyber charters, more money to be made by entrepreneurs and picking off students and putting them online and having them learn at home on computers. And more privately managed schools, and the lowest performing kids left to a dwindling and impotent public sector. Teachers with no job rights, teaching as at-will employees, where young people are reluctant even to go into this as anything other than a stopgap before they find their real career. That would be the most negative scenario. The most positive scenario would be that as these ideas play out, the public would get wise, and they'd say, wait a minute, these cyber charter guys, they're not producing better education, and they're making millions, and we're not going to allow this in our state. So if they want to do cyber, virtual learning, that's fine, but it has to be done in a context where there's no big profits, and where it's for distance learning, it serves real educational needs, and it's not for the profit drive of the corporation. And where the public says, charter schools are not the magic bullet, because we've seen the test results coming out year after year. They're doing no better than our regular public schools. Why should we hurt our regular public schools to allow other people to be able to pay themselves big salaries or to just have the fun of running a school? our public schools are our public trust. We need to have a good fire department. We need to have a good police department. We want to have good public facilities. So there's a possibility that with growing evidence and just kind of pushing, and this won't happen automatically. It'll only happen because people work at it. This whole thing could implode. And there could be, not this election cycle, I don't see it happening, but maybe the next one, somebody who comes along and says, we're running our education system. We have to do much better. Public education is a vital institution in this country. We can't let it die by attrition. So that could happen. That's the hopeful side.
That's the hopeful side.
And we have to value our teachers. We have to change the teaching profession to make it more respected, more honored, to attract people who see this as a lifetime commitment and bring in well-prepared, well-educated people so that it's almost competitive to get into this wonderful field. That would be the bright scenario. So I've given you the dark scenario, the bright scenario, probably something in between, but I would hope that it's the bright scenario.
You have been a member of the National Academy of Education since 1979. You are currently ranked as the #1 most influential educational scholar in the country. You have earned honorary degrees from multiple colleges and universities. You have delivered honorary speeches around the world, and you have received countless other awards, designations, and honors, including many Friend of Education awards. You were also invited by the Library of Congress to deliver lectures in honor of Thomas Jefferson's 250th birthday. What do you think Thomas Jefferson would have to say about the current state of our education system?
Well, of course, when Thomas Jefferson lived, there was no public education system. And he had very strong belief in meritocracy. His most famous, well, he has many famous lines, one of which I quoted is the title of one of my books, where he says, preach a crusade against ignorance. And that's why I call that book The Troubled Crusade. But he believed that education was so crucial to a democracy that the ability to read and to make your own judgment was the most important ingredient in democratic citizenship. Of course, having the ability to read in our society is not enough, because so much of what people read and so much information that they have access to is now filtered through a small number of very powerful corporate media, so that one needs to have, in thinking critically, the ability to search out other sources. I mean, you can't just go by what you hear on cable or on the major networks or in the major documentaries, because these days they're often saying the same thing. This is like a big echo chamber. So it becomes an essential ingredient of what Jefferson would recognize as democratic citizenship, to have the ability to step back and shape an independent view. But one of Jefferson's other famous line was, he said that when he proposed a school system for Virginia, he talked about raking from the rubbish. And of course, he wasn't thinking of integrated schools, but he talked about raking from the rubbish the best qualified. And so at each level in the school system, only the best would rise to the top. And we've been trying to expand the base, not to have this narrow pyramid, but rather to broaden it. And we know that there is a tremendous fall off from the time that children start school to the time they finish high school, and then from the time they finish college. But I think we continue to have this enormous challenge, and it's a double challenge of not just expanding access to schooling, but actually improving schooling. And this is why I come back to my kind of passion, which is having a vision of what good education is, not just a vision of what good data is, but a vision of what good education is. But at the same time, the other half of the challenge is to meet the social issues that drag down achievement and that drag down families and drag down children. And that's why I have come in my, in these years of my life, to think that we must meet the double challenge of both improving schools and reducing poverty, because where the U.S. does almost lead the world is in child poverty rates. And when we compare ourselves to a country like Finland, where less than 4% of the children are in poverty, while our child poverty rate is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 22%. it should be considered a scandal, and we should be talking about it every day, but we tend not even to think about it or mention it. And so
or censor it out of our books.
Yeah, or censor it out of the book so that we don't even confront it.
Confront the issue.
And, you know, I did see a documentary the other day, or rather something on 60 Minutes about child poverty, but that was pretty rare. We've pretty much thrown up our hands and said, well, we tried to fix it and we couldn't, so let's just focus on the schools. But the schools are school results are so correlated with socioeconomic background that it's pretty hard to avert your eyes from how poverty hurts children and reduces their chances in school.
Yeah, it's inconvenient to look at it for us. With all of your accomplishments, what is next for you? What haven't you accomplished that you'd still like to achieve?
You know, I guess what I want to accomplish is to get in better physical shape. The last 2 years I've been running around so much and traveling so much that I haven't taken care of myself. So my goal is to try to be healthy, to continue to provide support and encouragement for people that I think are trying to do the right thing for children, and to I don't have any professional. I have no big professional goals. I would like, if I have the time, I would very much like to write a memoir, because I've led several different lives, you know, in Houston, and then in my 25 years as a mother and beginning my life as a scholar. And then these past 25 years have been very different and very interesting. So I'd love to put it all together, and that, I think, would be my last writing challenge. But I have absolutely no ambitions for any kind of public appointment, office position. And I think in some way, having abandoned all ambition has freed me, and it's allowed me to say what I think. And you know, I've discovered that some people like it when you say what you think, and a lot of people don't. But
there it is.
There it is. I have to. This is what I'm free to do, and maybe when they're 73, they can do it too.
Who has helped you become the person you are today the most?
Well, it would be many people. And you know, I could go to it at many points in my life. I'd say that in terms of my educational thinking, I really have thought for myself. I mean, I certainly was influenced by Richard Rothstein. I mean, I have to say, during the time when I was over on the right, Richard and I would take long walks, we would argue, and he was great because I'd have to say, he never gave up on me. He always thought that there was something there that he would grab hold of and turn around. And I can't say that he was responsible for turning me around, but he was, having him as a friend as I was beginning to see the world differently was important to me. My partner, Mary, has been very important, not because she influenced me on any of the big ideas. We never discussed No Child Left Behind. We never discussed testing or accountability or charters, and she would be in favor of vouchers, probably, because she's such a strong advocate of Catholic education. But she also, having spent 30-something years in the public school system, understands the challenges. And what I've learned from her was about the bringing together my kind of ethereal theories and my ideas that were not grounded, and she grounded them, about how hard it is to do the work, how many problems the kids have, how hard their lives are, how when you have a few hundred children in your care, or 1,000 kids or 2,000 kids in your care, each one of them comes with a different set of issues, problems, needs. The ones who've been kicked out of their home, the ones whose father died the night before, the ones whose mother has AIDS, the girl who becomes pregnant. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. There's not a day where some kid is not in crisis. And then learning all this from her and seeing the day-to-day grittiness of running a school has grounded me. So that's been important for me. But at the idea level, I have to say that I have been shaped, and I've come to realize this by having so many different experiences. And at the time, I couldn't appreciate what it meant. First of all, having grown up in Houston in a big family, having gone to public schools, going to Wellesley and having the kind of wonderful intellectual stimulation there, and the lifelong friends that I don't have really from Houston, but I have from college. And then my experiences having Lawrence Kremen as my mentor. I mean, gosh, you don't get any better than that in this field. He was the best, and he never gave me false praise. He was always very encouraging, but he would also be critical when it was necessary. He was a wonderful mentor, and I always felt like I had this little voice in the back of my head saying, "You haven't read enough, you haven't thought enough, you haven't this, you haven't that. You know, take more books with you on vacation. It was never good enough." And he kind of created that inner voice. So he was certainly a huge influence. And then I had, I think, the wonderful experience of working on the curriculum in California, which taught me so much. In going to Washington, it wasn't, you know, between the federal government and then Brookings. That was a great experience. And even today, as I read about what's going on in D.C., I usually know most of the players. And I think that was really good. I was there, what was it now, 20 years ago. And that was really good. Then I had lots of other sort of experiences over the years that have brought me in touch with key people in different states. And with this last 2 years, as I've traveled around, I have email friends all over the country, people I've never met. And we're like best buddies, and I've never seen their face. So, you know, it's the age of the internet, and you develop these friendships.
Relationships.
And who knows, but it's been, this is what I like to somehow find a way to pull together in a memoir if I ever find time to write it, and I hope to. I'm not going to do any traveling in June, July, and August, and so that'll be a time to reflect and think about
what might come,
what might happen next. But I have no other professional goal at this point. I'm not going to write any more histories. I don't have enough years left to do that. Each of my books, other than The Language Police, they usually took 5 to 7 years to write, and I don't have enough time for that.
What inspires you?
I have to say that I have a sense of outrage.
Outrage.
Yeah, and I see things happening. Like right now, what keeps me going is I think so many teachers are being so badly treated, and it makes me really upset for them. And very often, well, always when I go out and speak, teachers come out to me, and they thank me, but then some of them cry, and they tell me about how hard it is and how hard they work. And when I was in Washington State last week, I met with a group of teachers from across the state. And the last speaker, they were talking about what can we do, and the last speaker got up and he began talking about the kids that he teaches. And he said some of them are carried in, some of them I have to catheterize, some of them I have to do the push medicine. And he's teaching the most severely disabled children. And he's a big burly guy, like a football player. And I almost cried as I was listening to him. And I said, you know, maybe what you need to do is to do some YouTube videos and let people know this is what teachers do.
Oh, sure.
I could see it. And, you know, I was so moved by what this man does. He says, I have people who couldn't even come into my classroom because they would be horrified at the condition of the children. And I live with these kids every day, and I love them. How can you not be inspired by people like that, but also outraged at the people who go on television and movie documentaries and say that these people are paid too much? These people don't work hard enough.
They don't deserve tenure.
They don't deserve any job protection.
What is your favorite word?
Oh, God. I don't have a favorite word.
What's your favorite curse word?
Oh, I don't curse. In fact, I avoid people who curse. I do occasionally curse, but I try never to do it in public.
What profession other than your own would you have liked to attempt?
Oh, you know, if I were to do it all over, I jokingly say to myself, I wish I had been a film historian. That would have been fun. I mean, I think about how hard it is. What I'm doing is hard because it's so controversial, and, you know, people either love what you're doing or they hate what you're doing, and that's kind of a charge in that. But on the other hand, it would be such fun to be a film historian because everybody would say, oh, wow, I didn't know that about June Allison. I didn't know that about Betty Hutton, and you know, stuff like that. That would have been a lot of fun.
What profession other than your own would you have not liked to attempt?
Oh, cooking, cleaning, anything having to do with housework.
What is your favorite movie?
Singing in the Rain.
Oh,
I love musicals. I love the musicals of the 40s and the 50s.
Do you go into Manhattan quite often and see musicals?
No, we either watch them on TCM or
The older ones.
you know, or buy. I have quite a collection. I used to go to video stores as they were going out of business and buy all the old videos of movies of Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and you know, I love all of those, that ilk.
What is your favorite book?
Well, let's see. Among books that I really, really like, I don't know if I have a single favorite. I loved Middlemarch. I've read Moby Dick several times.
That's right behind you.
Although I have skipped large sections of it in which I can't deal with the anatomy of the whale in that detail. But I think the story is very powerful. And let's see, what else have I loved? I guess I loved War and Peace. I mean, it took me a very long time to read it. I got around to it many years after I should have read it, and I thought, I'll never get into this. But then once I got into it, I just thought it was an incredible book. So,
if you could tell President Obama one thing, what would it be?
Spend half an hour with me.
Perfect. We'll send him an email.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Gosh, I'm going to have to think about that. Well, I guess at this point, I would love to have dinner with President Obama and talk to him about his education policies and explain to him why I think he's heading in the wrong direction and what I think he should be doing, and that saying nice things about teachers doesn't substitute for doing the things that would make them feel valued. That the words are not enough, the actions have to be there too.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I'd like him to say that all of your family and friends will be here with you.
Sure. What advice would you offer to graduate students and beginning researchers who hope to make a contribution to education like you have?
I'd say that you should learn what I learned when I was working at the New Leader magazine many years ago. I had been writing book reviews and kind of trying out different voices and genres, and the editor said to me, find one thing and make it your own. So I'd say to graduate students, find the ideas, the issues, the things that you really care about and become deeply knowledgeable and become the master of your trade. Don't settle too quickly on your beliefs because they may change. Listen to different voices, read widely, try to learn about other disciplines other than your own so that you can see your discipline from different points of view. And then once you find the thing that really, really turns you on, then dive into it and make yourself the master of that. And don't ever be afraid that it's already been done. Everything's... Kremen once said this to me. I said, but that's already been done. And he said, yeah, everything's been done, but once you do it, it'll be new. And don't worry about that. So don't worry about, it's, you know, people have been saying that since Shakespeare. I can never be Shakespeare, therefore why should I write a play?
Sure.
People keep writing plays.
Sure. When asked to capture the essence and nature of Diane Ravitch, everyone agreed you're brilliant, have an admirable integrity, and besides giving honorable mention to your most recent book especially, they note that your most significant accomplishment is personal, noting most how you stay close to and grounded by your family and friends. Mary notes, you are a woman of great personal integrity and strength. Your enormous intellect allows you to connect every dot to understand and in turn explain to others. You are simply brilliant. Linda Gottlieb notes you are ferocious for your causes, for your friends, and for your loved ones. You are a contrarian, our necessary outlier. According to Francie Alexander, You are a beautiful blend of art and science as you put your considerable talents into what is arguably the most important in defining education issues of our time. Your son Michael agrees, highlighting as well your intelligence and incredible integrity. You bristle at being told what to do. You are a true individual. Thank you. Well, there's no doubt you are leading this crowd, and we throughout the community continue to follow you as one of our best, brightest, and best dressed educational leaders. On behalf of all of us, future educationists, educational researchers, and the like, we thank you, Diane Ravitch, for everything you do and for being our necessary contrarian.
Well, thank you. If I can just say one thing in response, I have never thought of myself as brilliant. I still don't think I'm brilliant. I think that I have a large degree of questioning ability and skepticism, and I can write clearly. I don't think I'm a great writer. I just think I write clearly, and I think everybody can learn to do that.
And you're humble.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been fun.